the big turning for me in life of that directed my life onwards was in 1977 uh, in England, when I saw a light phenomenon of extraordinary proportions, and so did other people around me, and it jolted me because the thing I saw couldn't really happen outside of a dream, but it was happening in reality.
Mm.
Uh, and uh, and that really was a juncture in my life that led me on to my writing and all the rest of it, and research all over the world, and then talking about it all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, that it's really that was the turning point. But the experience in Ireland was of another nature, and it was more recent, about the year 2000, and it deeply, deeply affected me. I really don't want to go into it too lightly, because it's a deep experience.
Mm.
But so was the light phenomenon in 1977. Uh, I was at an art college
Mm-hmm.
in just south of Bromley, which itself is just south of London, in Kent.
Mm-hmm.
And we all were working towards our diploma study. And so we were working fairly late, and I was on the fourth floor. And I wanted to mix some colors, and we didn't want to put the lights on. The strip lights changed the quality of the colors. So I went over to a north-facing window and to mix the colors. And something made me look up. And in the sky, it was about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, in May, in a May day, May the 16th, I think. And this light was coming towards the college over the fields. It was in the sky. And it was the shape of a door. It was a rectangle. And it was pulsing orange. And I was looking at it, and what is it? And it came to a halt a few hundred feet above the fields. So I was looking up at through the top corner of the window I was at, and I didn't know what it was. I couldn't explain it to myself, and I just shouted out to the others. I kept my eyes on this thing, and I said, "Come to the window! Look what's out there!" And so some of the other people working late in the studio came to the window, and they all went. They complained first of all. They moaned, "What is it?" Oh, and get there, and their jaws dropped because they could all see this thing. And it was absolutely regular, perfect corners, straight sides, and everything, pulsing this orange color. And we just looked. You didn't have a record, couldn't place it in anything in your head, in your experience. And as we looked, the pulsing got duller and duller.
Mm.
And then it collapsed, and it boiled in the same place, didn't move around, but it boiled around this orange like uh, fire, and then it reconstructed itself, and it had the silhouette of a figure. At
No
least I
way.
saw it as a silhouette of a figure, and I was backing off from the window by now, and because I didn't know what it was awe-inspiring. And other people I contacted later, and sometimes years later, to make sure I really did see this thing.
Mm.
And they saw a cross or a figure, and then it collapsed in on itself. and there was no details. It was just this shape, orange shape, and it got duller and duller, and finally collapsed again. And there was just like a rosy smudge in the sky for 15 minutes after this thing. So it was something quite extraordinary. And also, while it was up there flickering away, people came out on the car park below, and they're all looking up. And one of them came up from downstairs and up. Said, "Did you see that UFO?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Well, it's not a machine from outer space. That was more out of the Old Testament, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was not mechanical, and it was light, and it wasn't a cloud. It was a pleasant evening, clear sky, just a few wispy clouds, and I had a bit of a mental breakdown afterwards. Just because I didn't know, I couldn't trust what was real and not,
Mm-hmm.
and it badly affected me. And the next day, none of us who saw this thing, we weren't babbling on about it. We were silent because I think we were all traumatized by the experience. So it sparked, and then I started reading into UFOs and going to lectures and things, and none of it really resonated with me. It was just this experience. But then I had I later that same year, 1977, probably was in late summer, so a few months later, we were coming back from a town in the east of England. We just hung a gallery. We were art students. Just hung an exhibition. Coming back to London in a friend's car. He was Norwegian, and he was, he had a left-hand drive car, the sort of thing you people drive, and and we just driving like a beautiful late summer afternoon. I had another friend sitting in the seat in front of me. I was in the back. And I just glanced out at the passing countryside. And suddenly, just above treetop height, was this black round shape. I saw an orange rectangle originally, but this was a black shape. And it was floating along, keeping pace with the car. And I noticed the guy in front of me had also seen him. He was looking like this. Uh, and it suddenly disappeared, gone, and reappeared moments later, a field or two away, and it soared up into the sun's rays. Couldn't see it, and got lost. And we both shouted out at the same time. The guy in front of me, "What was that? Did you see that?" And the Norwegian fellow who was driving, of course, didn't see it. And he said, "Well, what was it?" And he put on the brakes, and we went sideways down the road. And he was hopping mad. He was angry as hell. "Why didn't you tell me?" Well, it was on. And both of us said, we couldn't speak. And that was they're the only two times I've seen anything definite. I've seen odd lights and so on, been to, checking the Min lights in Australia, and to the Hessdalen Valley in Norway. On the Hessdalen Valley, they had a program which started in the 80s there was an outbreak of light phenomena. And again, they weren't UFOs, they were lights. And anomalous lights, strange lights. And there was so much talk about it. People went up looking at it. And they were being seen every few days. So a colleague of mine, who in fact I went to uh, Erling, uh, Erling, uh, anyway, he set it up, and there's an automatic station there. And if you go to Hessdalen Valley, to put that in the browser,
Mm-hmm.
Hessdalen, Hessdalen, you'll get to their automatic station, and you can actually sit at your computer and keep looking 24 hours a day and night. And they've taken it's not happening much now, much less, a few times a year now. But there was a period when it was very intense. And I mentioned that in passing. Anyway, we went there. And I've been to the Marfa Lights two times in Texas. And there is a light phenomenon there. And we actually showed that it was distant car, like 40 miles distant car headlights. It wasn't the Marfa lights. But we talked to people, a priest in one case and a teacher in another, who had actually seen the lights. So there was a phenomenon going on there. And I was so intrigued by this first experience in England that it put me on to a lifetime really of exploring and doing these things. The first book I actually wrote was this, called Earthlights.
Earthlights.
And I've written more since, uh, where I gathered together everything I could find out through folklore and everything else, and other people could tell me, and put it together. And one of the connections I found, which became my main strand, was studying ancient sites, archaeological things. And my latest book, I'm sorry, it looks like I'm flogging things here, but is this.
Yeah.
And it's one of the chapters deals with light phenomena being seen at standing stones, ancient prehistoric sites, because there seems to be an association. And it could be, well, anyway, what are these lights? It's too much to go into. You have to read the book.
Just one question
Too much to
before, Paul. How come? I mean, did you want it to be a painter? Was this
initially, yes.
So what happened to your creativity in terms of
Well,
painting? Did you just stopped
no,
it?
no, I carried on painting. Initially
Okay.
for exhibition, but then after that, the writing took over. That was my creativity. Also, I found I could earn more money writing than
Fair
if
enough.
you want the bald truth. So it just took over. That was my direction, and I was sort of forced into it by providence, circumstance, whatever you want to call it.
Just
That
one
was my
question
calling.
regarding painting as well. Did you try to paint these light phenomena at all?
I painted ancient sites. That was my link. And then I photographed them, became quite a photographer, if I say so myself. And I wrote about them. What I actually study, and have been studying of late, is archaeoacoustics, the sound associated with prehistoric sites. And you wouldn't think there was any sound, but there is in all sorts of ways, echoes and so on. And some stones ring like bells if you tap them. So I've been studying that a lot, done a lot of papers on that and that sort of thing. So my nexus, if you like, was these strange lights, and then the painting was first, then there was that, and then there was the ancient sites, and they've melded together in what I do in my life's work. And I've talked to a lot of people about the light phenomenon all over the world. The Aborigines told me that when they see these Min lights, they have different names for them. They have Aboriginal names. They say if you get too close, you get a pressure in your chest. This is a physiological reaction to something. And I talked to a builder in Wales, young man, and I first of all, I've been called to this place in Wales. It's just a small, tiny village, and this guy was coming from the pub. He wasn't drunk, and he was going home, and he had to cross. We followed the whole route, cross this ancient bridge over the river there, and he stopped to light a cigarette. And while he was in this pose, this light, a ball of light, beach ball size, came up from the river. It floated up and hovered around him like this. And he thought, what's that? And he just when he lit his cigarette, it shot back like a frightened animal. Mm. And it was a white light, and it just followed him home, towards his home. He thought, he said, I can't go back with this thing behind me. So he went in amongst some bushes and trees on the roadside, and it followed him, weaved its way around the branches and so on. And he just freaked out. Fortunately, it didn't follow him too far and he could get home. Now, you would say that's some old drunk, but no. I'd been called there because the local newspaper said there's phenomena here, Mr. Devereux, and we know you're studying this stuff. And so I went to see it, but I didn't see anything, but I did interview people and then went into the history of the place. And in 1912, there was a complaint of corpse candles, what they call them, light phenomena that they thought at the time, 1912, were spirits of the dead, or a warning that somebody in the community was going to die. And it was quite a powerful Welsh legend of this place. So they were seeing lights there for a century or more. And so this guy he didn't know that, of course. Only found it out from an old book. So I talked to a lot of people, got their experiences. In Ireland, I asked a lot of people, and a lot of it was just general legends. But a few people, only a few, were telling me of their memories of meeting phenomena like these lights and so on, fairy lights. And it was a whole other story, what they were talking about. And there were spirits, there were people saw things. And what Charlotte and I were doing that time was I haven't got it here. We were researching for a book on spirit paths around the world, the traditions, that's folklore.
Yeah.
And one of the things were fairy paths, and we went to the University College Dublin, and they have the reports, legendary reports going back to the 1930s, and they asked the children of Ireland, Republic of Ireland, to ask the oldest person in their family what their legends were.
Interesting.
And it turns out now that is the oldest verbatim record of folklore in Europe. And so we got what we could gain from it from about fairy paths, and we plotted them geographically where they said they were. Now, don't get me wrong, there's no actual fairy paths, but they link places in the folk memory. So, okay. And we were going around looking at these places, talking to people, what memories they had, and so on. So we had our experience there, but I'm not going to go into that because it wasn't a strange light, but it was very strange. I can tell you what it was. But everything was started for me with that thing in 1977. The light near Bromley, Kent. And he set me off on a path. And so I did paint. I must admit, I'm not painting much now at all, but I did paint for a number of years. But we're not talking art here. We're talking something else. And but it can, yes, it can promote artistic endeavor, creative endeavor. And I found that interesting.
Mm. And when you were in Australia, what was your experience with the Aborigines and their belief on ancient and sacred places?
That didn't compute because, well, it's natural rock outcrops with carvings on them as really their sacred place. No, we followed the reports of Min Min lights and other things, and we were in the outback. The TV guy with us wanted to follow us around. And we were a couple of weeks there in very remote places, talking to remote groups of Aborigines. And as I said, one guy said, when you get near these lights, I can't pronounce the Aboriginal term for them. He said, you feel a pressure in your chest, which really intrigued me. And we went around various places. We did see lights. I just can't guarantee they were the phenomena. One effect we saw, because we set up gear, cameras and whatnot, and all sorts of technical stuff, in places where there had been reports, and out in nowhere at all, uninhabited, except by the occasional Aborigine. They told us the areas to go to. And in one case, while we were setting things up, a beautiful flare of golden light came up out of the ground, just like that, gone in a second, like a fan of light. And I think that was certainly odd. What we did record was a light, but it was at a good distance. There shouldn't have been any cars or anything like that around. So I don't know what it was, but we did see that, record it and film it. And other places, you go to these things are not always on show. They come and they go. But it was a fascinating time. And what I think, there's some form of plasma. They're not alien. I call them earthlights there to say not something from outer space. These things are from the earth. They probably predate the human race and probably predate, they're very old entities or energies or whatever they are. And in Canada, I spoke to the late Dr. Michael Persinger, and he'd been studying light phenomena too, very technically. And he said, well, I said, some of these things, and other people have said it to me, and they behave like with sort of animal instincts, these lights.
Mm.
And I said, that's a difficult one to explain to anybody. I can't explain it to myself. And he said, well, there's no reason why there shouldn't have been complex forms of consciousness actually in a geophysical form.
Mm.
It doesn't just have to be biological,
Mm.
which we are, because we think we're the tops of everything, human
Ah,
beings,
well, no.
and we're the
Otherwise, we
boss.
wouldn't behave like that, I would say.
Well, they scatter these lights if you get near them. I talked to one American researcher who said he saw lights uh, uh, near a ridge in, I don't know, Virginia or somewhere. And he had a flashlight and he flashed at them and they skidded out the way of the light beam. And he said he had a feeling they had some sort of consciousness. And so did two geologists on Martha, who was there for other reasons. And they saw the lights and they chased them in a Jeep and they ran away. And he said the times they behave, other things are just more like ball lightning and non-sentient, but there's a version of them uh, that seem to have some sort of awareness, consciousness. And they're very, so you've got to read the stuff because we go into the depths and register, record, and everything. So, but yes, I did keep the painting going for a while. You come back to that point.
By the way, did you also travel to the southern countries of Europe, like Greece or Egypt,
Oh,
Turkey?
well, I've been to Greece, I've been to Italy,
Mhm.
I've been to Germany, I've been
Mm.
to all over. Not always looking for lights, though, sometimes visiting ancient sites
Yes.
and sometimes just visiting. So, you
Mm.
know, but they're the only places where I've seen distinct phenomena. I mean, went to Hesdalen in Norway and I never saw any of these lights, but I was impressed with the setup they'd had
Yeah.
and automatic stations and things,
Yeah.
which is the thing to do.
A different question on ley lines, what type of pattern, because I never understood it really, what type of patterns can there be seen in Europe? Just let's focus just on Europe, Is there any specific pattern?
Oh, pardon. Um, no, for a start, there's no such thing as ley lines.
Ah,
Even though I'm associated with it, we
mm-hmm.
we I'm not I'm all for strangeness and wonders, signs and wonders. But when I was editor of the Ley Hunter magazine for 12 years or so. By the end of that time, we had completely uh, shown the falsehood of the thing. It was a
Ah,
modern myth, uh,
interesting.
but it led to a lot of other things, which there are lines,
Mm-hmm.
ways, the sort of spirit paths I'm talking about. So that it led to serious research, but it keeps recurring on the internet, and
Mm-hmm.
it never dies. So there's no patterns, but there are versions of ancient lines, connections. People abuse me about uh, decrying lays, but it's quite clear when you really, really study it and the phenomena of folklore, really modern.
Mm.
We have folklore too, not just old-fashioned people.
When you went to Greece, do you remember what intrigued you the most there? Asking for a very personal reason because my father is from there, and
Oh,
I
really?
love. And I will be traveling next week to Greece, to
That's
Crete,
beautiful.
actually.
I love Greece. Um, and the islands, Santorini,
Mm.
I love, but now it's a sort of playground for millionaires now. And we went to Greece first, um, just to get away.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and I remember landing in Athens in the airport, uh, and the first place I wanted to go to was Delphi,
Yeah.
and it was midnight. I hired a car, we rented a car, and it makes you wonder. We drove through Athens around midnight, and how do we get from here to Delphi?
Yes.
And we looked at the sort of tourist maps and things, but all the street signs and everything were in Greek,
Yeah.
and couldn't read Greek. Anyway, somehow or other, got on the right road, and we ended up at Delphi. We arrived in the middle of a storm.
Oh,
Zeus was welcoming us. And of course, there's a big ravine in below the Temple of Delphi.
yeah.
And the lightning was going through the ravine. It was extraordinary. Oh, and it was a hell of a storm. And it really brought us there, you know. And then the next morning we went up where we stayed at an inn, and then we went up to the temple, and the smell of pine leaves and so on after the heavy rain,
Oh,
gorgeous. And I got into a whole thing about omphali. There's three amphalos stones in there. Anyway, this was a whole other area. But I didn't see any lights there, didn't see any phenomena, and no entities. But the ancientness of the place is,
yes.
and of course, Delphi is the place of Gaia, the goddess Gaia.
Yeah.
It's Apollo who usurped the place with his temple of Apollo there. And I always thought we visited Gaia. And of course, the Python, the Pythus, the Pythia, the the seer, the oracle,
Oracle of Delphi.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, of which there were many uh, eventually. But the sense of magic there is just colossal, all wonderful, and uh, that's the sort of thing that attracted us to Greece. And we go as often as we can. But now I'm not traveling very much because I'm in my 80th year, and it's not so easy now.
But you're doing quite well. At least this is the impression
Keeping
I have.
going, yeah.
Also, for personal reasons, because I work a lot with dreams, and the
All
deeper
right.
meaning of dreams. And you say also it's part as of your sensory archaeology. It would be great if you could elaborate here as well what you found during your 30, 40 years of research.
I couldn't summarize it. I've written 27 books. That might be a guide. Um, uh, well, I had lucid dreams,
Yeah.
uh, and um, and that also made me very alert to possible. I think a lot of people who see UFOs and things in a car at night going down a highway, especially American highways, long, straight. I think they go into a reverie, into a trance.
Mm.
And if it's a trance that produces a lucid dream type experience, you can't hardly tell them from normal reality. You
Mm.
know, I've had lucid dreams where I smell things, touch things. Uh, Apparently, all five senses can be operative in a lucid dream. Though they're rare. I've only had two of those. and others very fleeting. But we did a thing on dreams. Charlotte and I wrote a book on lucid dreaming. And so, yeah, and also there was a case we came across doing their research of, damn it, can I remember his name? It was a well-known Durrell, who wrote in a BBC journal about his experiences after the war in Greece.
Mm.
And he talked to a guy who was the warden at Mycenae, and he said he's moving on because he said, I can't stand the dreams in this valley.
Oh,
And it was Mycenae, yeah, I think. Anyway, there's a dream temple there, or was a dream temple, and he wondered, Durrell, after I thought, can dreams leave a record somewhere?
interesting.
And he wondered about that. Anyway, after World War II, he was, I think he was in Greece, near a dream temple. I can't remember which one it was. And his job was, he was in the army and he had to clear ordnance that had been odd bombs and things had left lying around. And he met a couple of, well, he was checking out on two soldiers who were there who were doing this work. He sort of remember this guy in Greece, the warden who couldn't stand the place because of the dreams he was having. And he said, do you have any, this was a dream temple here, do you have any dreams? And both soldiers went, oh, why do you ask that?
Yeah.
And they did. And they had to move their tents and stuff because they were parked out in the temple. I've written about this. I'm sorry, I'm pushing my books, but it's all in the books. And if I read it now, I could tell you. But anyway, and that really intrigued him, that these guys in this place, in a similar place, the warden, all had dreams. And he mused, speculated on the idea that dreams somehow can hover, haunt a place, especially if they're there and a lot of people have dreams. Somebody showed me this article. Thank God they did. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known anything about it. I know about the Durrells, but I didn't know he'd had this experience.
Did you have any interesting or strange dreams, while being on sacred sites?
Yes, one. It was a healing well in Cornwall, sorry, and it's a little woodland, small wood copse, and in the middle of it is an 11th century chapel, all collapsed now, more or less, just the walls and so on. But it had a tradition of dream healing, and people were taken up until the 18th century. If they were crippled or whatever, or mentally ill or whatever, their relatives would take them to this chapel, and they'd lie down on this ledge, which is still there and which I lay down on and had a dream on. Fascinating place. Now, the actual well, there's a sacred well there, and it is just a quarter of a mile out, and the water from it, and there used to be a keeper to the well, and she'd be the healer. They know the name of the last one, and I did once, but 80 years old. The water comes down a granite conduit into a font inside this little chapel, and still working, bubbling away. They'd have water splashed on them. They'd have to lie there and have to sleep. These people were brought.
Yeah.
There are some reported famous cases of healing
Wow.
One was a chap who became a famous soldier, but he was paralyzed, and his family took him to this place, and he could learn to walk again. So I don't know about the ins and outs of that, but that's the legend, the story about the place. There's another thing here I'll tell you in a moment, but I thought let's lay down, see if I have any dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lovely hot afternoon. I wanted to have a sleep anyway. I did dream, and these female hands appeared, just hands in front of me in the dream. And they went through this ritual, and they dipped their hands in the water. I'm not kidding, this is the dream. And it gently put the water over my eyelids and over my brow. And it woke me up. I thought, oh my God, did I? Oh. And I went over to the font, dipped my hands in, and I went through those motions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, I've had a dream at one of these dream places. And healing wells often have dream sleep associated with them. In Greece, a famous healing temple, there are 9 wells, so clear. It is
Oh.
now closed off to people, this well, because it's got a lot of holes in the ground, deep and dangerous ones. But local people said, yeah, go there. So we did, Charlotte and I, we went. And there are still the incubation beds, the sleep beds from 2,000 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
overgrown. I started to lie down on it, on one of these things, and a snake came out of the weeds and stuff, went over my legs.
Mm-hmm.
But they use snakes there, and I think it
Exactly.
was a descendant of the actual temple snakes,
Mm-hmm.
because they come up and lick you and think, oh, no, thanks. But the, they 9 wells, and one of them had water in that was brought from 11 miles away. That water is radioactive.
No way.
And uh, the water that came to the Cornish
Yeah.
chapel was granite. It was made out of granite. And I followed up on this, and a lot of people see things, have visions or whatever, in granite enclosures. And so I would always use granite to help promote sleep, a
Mm.
dream rather, not sleep. I'll sleep anywhere. But granite, it exudes radioactivity. That's what it does. And it struck me when I was in the Great Pyramid, and I went up. It'd been empty for 3 months, the King's Chamber, which is the one I wanted to go and measure the radiation, because the French were there and they were doing something in the Queen's chamber lower down. And so they closed the place off, but I got permission to get in. And I had Mohammed, who was my guide. He came up and he didn't like being in there. They don't like ancient places. Be quick, be quick. And I said, yeah, I'll take my time. Anyway, there was strong radiation in there because the walls are clad in Aswan granite. They brought the Aswan granite all the way 100 miles or whatever it is, 200,
Ah.
down the Nile. The pyramid itself is limestone, but they brought granite to line
Mm.
the King's Chamber with, and to line and that sort of coffin thing that's there is solid granite.
Oh.
And there's a book, can't remember, written in the 1930s of a guy who slept in that coffin
No.
in the pitch, because it's pitch black in there if you turn out the light. And he had visions. He saw basically lucid dreams, I think, but he reported that. And so there's some association between mild, I hasten to emphasize this, mild radioactivity and dreaming. It was present there in the dream temples of ancient times. So that was a revelation I didn't expect to get. And it's led me to strange places. That sighting in 1977 sparked off a whole chain of things that led me on a life journey and took me to places and to things and to experiences I never expected.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul, so much for sharing.
The trouble is, it in a way can remove you from the mainstream of our culture. I mean, if I talk to anybody, casually, well, yeah, we saw this thing in Ireland or saw these lights and whatever. Either the cranks get hold of you, or the people say, well, very politely, I can't believe you, and sometimes not politely, get very angry with you.
Yes.
So you end up shutting up in the end. You don't. So that's why I've written a lot of books. So I've got it out there, and not a specific project. There's one ongoing that I'll not announce until it's proven or not proven. Still looking into acoustics. That was another thing. The acoustics itself led to a true archaeological discovery in the Hypogeum on Malta.
On Malta.
And I won't get into that. It's another line. Give me 10 hours and I'll go through it slowly. But yeah, I mean, things happening. We live, as one friend said, you live a rich life. It's not like that when I go down shopping or washing up or anything, but there are these instances that are very noteworthy, and I feel privileged to have had them. I hope there's still a couple left. We'll see.
Right. Thank you so much, Paul.
Very welcome.